Don't put your yield at risk, put your trust in proven solutions. Anvil Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations imitator brands can't match. See the difference at defendyourn.ca.
Joining us right now is two people from CAPI. Up first, Tyler McCann, Managing Director at CAPI. Tyler, how are we doing?
I'm doing well, Sean. Thanks for having us on today.
Yeah, hey, it's great to. It seems like we chat with you quite a bit. Also, which is great. Also joining us from CAPI is Elizabeta Lika. Elizabeta, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, okay. So, Elizabeta, let's start with you. This report, Review, Restrain, Reset, is kind of looking at the future of agricultural programming at AAFC. Talk about, I guess, the first why the report. Is there a whole bunch of, I guess, unnecessary spending and unnecessary programming, a bunch of waste, or what are we looking at here?
So the situation is a bit more nuanced than just about the quantity of spending on agriculture. So this report really offers a fresh perspective on the agriculture policy and spending. And one of the great motives for the report is really around the fact that agriculture spending is not just about numbers, but it's about impact, and how much we spend is important, but also how we spend, how the programs are designed, and how the funding is allocated is equally important. And farmers themselves, from experience, know that pouring money into a problem doesn't simply solve the problems in agriculture. Also, every 15 years or so, there is also a push to reshape government. The political debate with Carney and also Poliev around some potential budget cuts if they're elected means that agricultural spending will face scrutiny. Moreover, the sector is facing many structural systemic issues that go beyond the spending quantity. So all these motivations and factors were really some of the main reasons why CAPI started working on this report, which is not about looking at the potential review as a threat, but more as a way to learn from past lessons and how to move forward with recommending a path to review, to restrain, but to better allocate it, the funding to agriculture, make the system better work for everybody, including farmers.
Now, government receives a lot of suggestions from stakeholders, a lot of requests from stakeholders, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Is there typically like a set of filters or criteria that the government typically uses to evaluate whether or not that spending is inside their parameters or worthwhile or predictably produces a high impact?
So, as I mentioned, this is not an unprecedented scenario. So, agriculture sector has gone through these reviews before, and we looked at some other like previous historical reviews, including the 1995 program review and also the 2012 deficit reduction action plan. And the historical economic and political events that occurred that led to those reviews really indicate that there is a six test criteria or methodology that the government can use and should use to really filter all the programs, the agricultural portfolio. And no programs should be off the table, no programs should be left really entrenched. And is this filter that guarantees that the outcome will benefit the sector and will make every dollar count when it comes to the spending for agriculture and for farmers?
Now, Tyler, I guess there's some of the audience going to be like, whoa, wait a minute here. Is CAPI suggesting like a Doge-like program to, cut staff immensely, cut programming considerably? Trying to there's essentially waste in the system. That's not what you're suggesting here?
No, absolutely not, Sean. And I think it's important to set first the context that it's not CAPI that's putting this on the table. Right now, the two leading candidates for prime minister in our election have both committed to cutting government spending. And so this is something that's going to happen. We're kind of due for it once in a generation. I think that there's some similarities in the United States where they've recognized the need to reduce spending, but what we're suggesting in our report is that we need a thoughtful approach that's well understood, that's transparent, that identifies kind of where there are priorities, where there is need, and clearly that's not what we're seeing in the United States today. So I think it's really important to separate what we see south of the border to the opportunity in Canada to do this in a way that makes spending in the ag portfolio better and more responsive. And I think the other thing that we've heard as we were writing this report is in the context of these US pressures, should you wait and do this later? And what we try and say is that no, we think that actually the pressure on making sure every dollar is spent effectively inside the ag portfolio is greater now than it was before. This is the time to make sure that when we're investing in risk management or R&D or market development or internal services, that we're getting the best possible impact and outcome of that spending. And I think that the reality is probably everybody in agriculture has got some examples of where we're not today.
Are there examples in the report that you identified where you think we need to take a closer look here?
Yeah, but we did. So Elizabeta talked about the tests that were used in the 90s. And so we applied those tests on a couple of different areas of federal spending. So one of them was on-farm environmental programming. And we kind of take that through the test. The federal government over the last 10 years has really pushed Ag Canada into the space. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on it before. And kind of our view is that does not pass what's referred to as the federalism test, that the provincial governments have in the past led on-farm environmental programming, and they should continue to lead on it. So Agriculture Canada should get out of that space, and the provinces should lead. It's not to say that on-farm environmental programming is not important, that it's not a good investment. The point is that's not an investment that should be being driven by the federal government.
Are there areas that you identified where we should be spending more?
Clearly, trade market access is something that we've identified as an area where that is clearly within the federal government's jurisdiction. It clearly responds to a very pressing need. And so there's an opportunities to invest more there. On R&D and innovation, we point out that there is maybe some investment potential to do more, but there's a question around the effectiveness test. Are we getting the results that we need out of there? So it's not just about, in that case, spending less or more, but how do we really look at that and spend differently? And I think that's, again, where we try and separate what we think should happen in Canada from what we're seeing in other countries. We need a far more thoughtful, comprehensive look at what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the impacts that it gets.
Now, both of you have alluded to these 6 criteria that were being applied in the 90s. When did we stop using them?
So when the Liberals in the 90s were really trying to struggle with this massive deficit at the time, they were very aggressive and they looked at every dollar of spending and they made everything that the federal government do pass the test. That's very different than the Harper government, but what happened in 2012, where they basically said to departments, you need to cut 10% of spending. And departments could use kind of different processes to get a 10% haircut. In the 90s, Transport Canada's budget was cut by over 60% as a result of it. Like, it radically reshaped the department. And so our view is that this should not be about a target. This should not be about 10 or 50 or 60% cuts. This should be about, is the money serving a purpose, and is it working, and is it getting the impacts that we need? And that's a far more thoughtful approach than just saying we want to save 10%.
Elizabeta, how do you measure the impact? What does that look like?
That's a good question. That's not a straightforward answer for sure. So, as Tyler mentioned, this 6-test methodology, answering all those questions, does the program address a real need today? Could the private sector handle this better? Are we avoiding duplicated efforts across the different levels of the government? And what is the right level of government to handle it? Are we using the best tools available? And crucially, how can we afford doing this way? Will partially help answer that question. But definitely, impact means different things to different stakeholders included in this process. And this is one of the main objectives of the report as well, to really pull in the sector and to make the sector actively engage in this process, to proactively shape how these reviews should unfold and to ensure that the Canadian agriculture grows stronger. So to make sure that the outcomes that are delivered through these programs are the outcomes that the government intends to deliver, but also those that the sector is looking to get out of the programs.
And Sean, I think it's important to highlight that one of the reasons we did this report is because often these processes happen behind the scenes and are not transparent, and they don't engage the sector. And what we find out at the end of the day is what the decisions government have made were. And we think that the sector needs to be more thoughtful and needs to realize these things are going to happen. This is effectively inevitable at this point in time, with both Carney and Trudeau calling for something like this to happen. And we should be prepared, and we should be thoughtful, and we should understand, and we should be able to take some positions around, here's what spending reduction could look like, and here's how we do it thoughtfully. So let's not let this happen behind closed doors. Let's have a more transparent discussion about it.
Are departments getting out ahead of this? Like, what are we hearing? Are departments, like, this is not just an agricultural thing? I would imagine there's other government departments that are going through this kind of thought process, and are they getting ahead of it, thinking that, okay, you know what, whether it's a Poilievre or it's a Carney government, we're actually prepared, and here's what we would suggest, or is that?
Yeah. So I don't think it's about getting ahead of it, because I think the senior leaders in government wait and see what the outcome of the election is. But clearly, there's a lot of work being done right now to understand this. Is one of the things when government goes into caretaker convention, it actually gives the senior leadership inside the bureaucracy time to do some of this pre-planning and thinking. So we know that they're thinking about some of these issues. We know they're looking at the language that the leaders, the parties are using, and they're trying to think through what that means in their portfolio. So I expect that, and I expect that it will happen quickly if it does. That's one of the things we say in the report, is that you should do this quickly. You should do this kind of as fast as you can afterwards. And I expect government departments are getting ready for that. Again, they may be spending some time trying to decode what spend less, invest more means from a Mark Carney government, but I'm not sure if they've got good answers on that yet, but that's part of what they're doing today. Well,
we're all going to find out very shortly, whoever is the victor in this upcoming federal election at the end of the month. Okay, Elizabeta, it's been great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you.
Tyler, all the best.
Yep, thanks, Sean.
Okay, we've been talking to Tyler McCann and Elizabeta Lika from CAPI. Oh, I should ask Tyler, where do we get this report? If somebody wants to read it, where do they go?
Absolutely. Please go to the CAPI website. You can find us on Google, social media channels, whatnot. When you're there, sign up for our newsletter so you can get these reports as soon as they're released.